Hi everyone. Today's video is about how and why I got off my ADHD meds. I have been chronically on the internet. I became a Twitch chess streamer when I was 15, and there's clips of me evolving. And sometimes someone who hasn't seen my videos in a couple years will look at me and be like, how are you the same person? I can't recognize you. You're not screaming and you're not annoying, blah, blah, blah. Well, I grew up, and on top of that, I learned how to deal with some of my issues. ADHD was definitely something that I struggled with. I am someone who's had ADHD my entire life, and especially in the last couple years, I started relying on my ADHD medications. I started with Adderall. I'm able to lock in for 6 to 8 hours a day. I am simply a machine and nothing can take me down. Until the sunset came around and all of a sudden you feel depressed and you're crying and you don't know why. And I slowly stopped liking it and wanted to change to Vyvanse. Effects of Vyvanse can last up to 14 hours, even 16 hours in some people, whereas your regular Adderall prescription was about 6 to 8. And what I noticed is this was drastically ruining my sleep. I would be able to fall asleep at midnight, but I would wake up to use the bathroom or something at 2, 3, 4, 5 a.m., sometimes 2 times in a night, and I could not fall asleep. It was terrible. So I would always have off and on days with my ADHD meds, sometimes 1 or 2 times a week. And specifically with the insomnia getting worse, I wanted to see how I could push myself naturally. So the first couple days when you're getting off ADHD meds, you're going to feel a lot of withdrawal systems and a lot of fatigue. And I ended up pushing, and day 3 turned into day 4, into day 5, and I was just thinking, naturally, why can't I get myself to feel better? The steps that I took to get to a point where I now genuinely feel like my brain works better without any Adderall or Vyvanse med meant me solving a lot of broken things in my day-to-day. I know that these days everyone is a health guru, and my goal is not to overwhelm you, but just to share what I did in case any of this inspires you. Some of these were quicker tips and tricks that I will share, and some of them are longer, harder battles, but you can pick your poison. Number 1, sleep. Thanks to social media, I feel like in general, sleep is talked about more, and I love the quote that we should talk about humans as being professional sleepers, because without it, you would literally die. Now, I've been reading this book called Why We Sleep, which goes specifically into the science of what happens in your brain while you sleep. And having being someone who has literally changed most of my life so that I get a good quality sleep every night, I still found new facts from this book that just kind of really honed in the reminder that sleep is number 1. In the book, he shares multiple studies that too little sleep significantly increases your risk at getting Alzheimer's. A 2011 study that tracked 684,000 men and women across different ages, races, and ethnicities across 8 countries showed that short sleep is associated with a 45% greater chance of fatal and non-fatal coronary heart disease. Adults 45 and older who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night are 200% more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke in their lifetime as compared to those sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. One of my non-negotiables in this past year became sleeping 7 to 8 hours every single night. Now, of course, there's many nights that I didn't, but I can say that I just shifted my thought of priorities. Over this past year, I genuinely started prioritizing my 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, and that doesn't mean that I became a complete introvert and I don't go out anymore. I would just weigh things out like, what's more important to me? Waking up tomorrow and feeling at my absolute best and my sharpest, and then pushing myself physically and mentally, or going out to this party. What I've realized is that most of the people I really enjoy hanging out with, you can do, and actually is much better to do not at a party, because what happens when I would go to these parties, specifically in LA, is you can't hear anything, the music's not very good, and then you have to drink alcohol. And my priorities very quickly became, I would rather feel good tomorrow than go to this. I just make plans with my friends before midnight, and even if you do have later activities, studies show that keeping your bedtime consistent matters more than the time you're going to bed. So if you're going to bed at 12 every night and you're waking up around 7 to 8, that's totally okay. I will be honest, the biggest thing that improved my sleep was stopping drinking. This wasn't something I was making a huge effort. I wasn't saying I want to go sober, but since I replaced a lot of these activities that I would go to and feel unfulfilled with actually quality time and actually making plans like cooking for friends or doing something where you can all sit and hang out and actually chat, I just wanted to be in the moment. I didn't really feel like I wanted my brain to be dumbed down, and I generally felt better not drinking. And this is not to shit on anyone who's drinking. I have Romanian parents, and every night they're like, why don't you have a glass of wine with us? But I'm going to be honest, even if I do now occasionally have a glass of wine before bed, I don't sleep as as well. Alcohol will stay in your system much longer than you think. When you drink, your body has to work harder to oxidize that alcohol. So even if it's a couple hours before bed, while you're sleeping, your body is working. And that means that your REM sleep is not as deep and that the quality sleep that you're getting is not the same. And this impact can last days after drinking. I know this isn't the most fun thing to hear. And I had a grandpa who literally had a shot of vodka for breakfast every morning. Again, we were Romanian. And he swore by it and told me that was part of why he was living so long. So if you want to continue drinking, it's not going to kill you. I'm just sharing what changed for me. And I think that generally alcohol was one of the things that had the worst effects on my sleep. And even if it was just one night of the week, in the book Why We Sleep, he shares that the effects of alcohol can last for several days, unfortunately. Now, when I say alcohol was one of the things, I'm going to get into the next two: blue lights and stimulation. If you haven't seen these trendy red light glasses, I do wear them in my house. But I hate to break it to you that just wearing the glasses isn't going to fix your sleep issues. Blue light does destroy your natural melatonin cycle, and I have replaced a lot of the bulbs around my house to LED bulbs that I can turn red once it's an evening time. And wearing these glasses definitely does help me when I'm working right before bed. But if you're just wearing these glasses to doom scroll before bed, chances are it's not going to significantly improve your sleep. And similar to alcohol, stimulation specifically from screens can last in your system much longer. When I did start improving my sleep and I would have one night where I would binge or I would scroll a lot before bed, you literally wake up hungover. It's like you're hungover from a screen, which is ridiculous, but it makes sense. Studies show that stimulating screen use not only affects your natural melatonin cycles, but also reduces slow wave sleep activity, which means less sleep spindles and more fragmented and lighter sleep. You produce hundreds to thousands of sleep spindles every single night, and there's direct correlation between learning, skill acquisition, and IQ and the number of sleep spindles. There's multiple studies showing that these sleep spindles help move memories from temporary storage in the hippocampus to long-term storage in the cortex. In Why We Sleep, the author conducted several trials showing the effects of sleep on memory. Of course, the most basic one was comparing a sleep-deprived group to a non-sleep-deprived group, and the memory retention was 40% worse in the sleep-deprived group. Sleep isn't just passive rest, but it's actually when your brain is stabilizing memories, and the different stages of sleep also have different functions for your brain. During your REM cycle, which comes after this slow-wave sleep with the sleep spindles, this is actually where your creativity and your problem-solving skills are solidified the most. Sleepers rich in REM sleep are far more likely to solve problems and have novel discoveries. There's actually some really funny anecdotes about this, where Dmitri Mendeleev, who wrote the structure of the periodic table, states that it came to him in a dream. After a deep dream, and that's when your deep REM sleep is happening, he woke up and wrote it all down, and that became our modern-day periodic table. Same with Paul McCartney's Yesterday. He said that he heard the full melody in a dream, and he thought he accidentally plagiarized it, but it turned out to be his original song. These stats I found particularly interesting because I have so many memories where I would be competing in my chess tournaments, and I would wake up after a dream and realize I was actively analyzing chess matches in my sleep. Now, how complex they were and how many moves I was really thinking ahead, I don't know, but they were brand new positions, and I remember actually problem solving in my sleep. I've also had other nights where when I would be obsessively working on music production before bed, I would wake up from my dreams where I had new melodies, new lyrics, and I'm literally working on Ableton in my dream, and sometimes I would write down melodies and ideas as soon as I woke up. Walker summarizes 3 different stages of sleep, the first 2 being the more slow wave sleep that comes before your REM sleep. The first stage helps solidify facts, skills, and accuracy. The second stage, memory stabilization, and the third, emotion, creativity, and insight, which can be sometimes why the next day after not sleeping, your mood just feels really down, which is something that I have been noticing now that I fixed my sleep. So it's not just that you need more sleep, but actually the structure of your sleep matters dramatically, which is why when I was going out and I would have a drink before bed, I would wonder, I still slept 8.5 hours, if not more. Why do I feel like shit? Well, obviously you're hungover, but second is because your brain didn't do any of these really important functions. This is why the phrase sleep on it is so important, and Walker talks about the importance of sleeping after studying and not pulling an all-nighter right before your exam, because when you sleep is actually when you're solidifying everything that you've learned. I had many nights when I would be working on creative projects or studying for something where I would push and try to get all my work done in the night, and I keep myself a little bit more limited to the time that I put my ideas on paper, because I'm pretty confident that if I were to revisit them tomorrow but get the initial ideas out for now, they're probably going to be stronger working on it after a good night's rest. I used to be a massive night owl, and I truly thought that my best ideas happened at night. I still work at night, but I limit myself. Usually I can get all my ideas down in 90 minutes, and most likely after those 90 minutes, you're not really getting that many great ideas. And and I cannot emphasize the importance of having a wind down routine where you're not just working before bed or you're not just scrolling before bed. And the best solution I can give you for that is reading. Right, you would never would have thought that I here would be yelling at you to go read some books. It took me losing my hearing and being locked into an oxygen chamber for 3 hours a day without any television to actually realize that I enjoyed reading, and that all this time I was just reading books about topics I wasn't actually interested in. And it's okay to get a bunch of books. Books are a great conversation starter. If you meet someone new, ask them for a book rec, start making lists, and likely chances if more than 2 people recommend you a book, maybe you should read it. I don't guilt myself sometimes if I feel a book is repetitive and I want to skip around. I'll just read the sections that I think are interesting for me and just move on. There's no reading police. Reading is truly the best thing you can do before bed. I thought even once I curated my algorithm on my phone to be just music and art, it doesn't matter because those are still stimulating new ideas, and it genuinely takes me like 45 minutes to just clear my head. Whereas if you don't open up Pandora's box, you can just fall asleep much faster. I genuinely thought I had chronic insomnia, but I was just being an idiot and I just had an iPhone before bed. I have a friend who is so specific about no phones before bedtime that if their partner has to check an email or something, they have to go outside of the bedroom. It's honestly hilarious. I like the rule that if you're going to use your phone, do it while you're pacing, and I'll walk around in circles because then it feels more like there's a differentiation that right now you're just working, you're not unwinding, and when you get in that bed, you're putting your phone down. Now, on to the next topic. Creatine. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the next health trend where every company is trying to sell you a creatine product. It's already happening. Don't buy the creatine gummies. Creatine is a pretty affordable supplement, and there are more and more studies showing that creatine has cognitive benefits specifically with stressors on your brain, similar to how it works on your muscles. So stressors meaning sleep deprivation, or if you're just really using your brain. Learning counts as a stressor, so does emotional stress and depression. And honestly, it's 2025, so most likely your brain is going to be stressed. And according to Dr. Mike Israelti, I hope I said your name right. If not, I'm really sorry. He says that there are absolutely no cons to taking 5 grams a day of creatine for healthy individuals. To anyone who thinks that creatine can impact your liver, that means you're getting creatine mixed up with creatinine, which is actually a waste byproduct that your body makes. And that's not the same thing as creatine, and it has no effects on your kidney. Creatine specifically, I started taking many months ago purely for weight training. Let me tell you, these studies that I'm going to reference are small, but I've just been doing this own experiment on myself, and I really recommend Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She has some really great videos on this. I will reference some of her things. Dr. Rhonda Patrick references this controlled experiment where high doses of creatine, this was approximately 0.35 grams per kilogram of body weight, so roughly 20 to 30 grams of creatine, was given to sleep-deprived individuals. The participants who received creatine had improved cognitive performance, better brain energy markers, and improved processing speed and reaction time. Now, I have been experimenting with this on my own, and it's not just sleep deprivation, but 2 weeks ago, I had a chess tournament, and I haven't studied chess in a long time. I was spending about 2 hours a day just doing puzzles, which that is when I feel my ADHD the most. When I start a chess.com and I'm sitting there for 10 minutes and I can't do it. And the baseline for creatine that people have been taking has been 5 grams, but more and more we are finding that 10 grams might be the new baseline, and specifically on stressors, you can take even more than that. This is not medical advice. Rhonda Patrick shares that she even takes 20 grams when she is sleep deprived. So that's what I did during my chess tournament. I joked about this. I don't think this counts as doping. It's just creatine. I didn't win the tournament anyways. Maybe it didn't do anything. Maybe it's all placebo. I was taking at least 10, if not a little bit more, and I definitely felt that in the afternoon crashes where I always kind of get tired, and this happens with or without Adderall. I was not feeling the midday crashes so much when I was taking high doses of creatine. Right now I'm just taking 10 grams, but I do feel a difference that when I don't take it, or when I take 5 compared to the 10, I don't feel like I'm as sharp throughout the day. Could very much be placebo, but I would recommend experimenting with it. There's also other benefits from creatine, like increasing your bone density. So if you are a woman, it's great, especially if you're a postmenopausal woman. I've been trying to get my mom on creatine. There's so many benefits of creatine. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'll link some of my favorite videos in the description below from the experts talking about these recent studies. The best type of creatine you can buy is creatine monohydrate. And the one thing I want to warn about is there's so much marketing scams these days. Make sure that your creatine is third party or NSF certified, and that's just to make sure that there's no lead or other ingredients being put into your creatine. Make sure that it's just one ingredient, creatine monohydrate. I personally would not buy the products like the gummies. Those have been shown that they're not effective. Now, when I first started taking my creatine, I did have a little bit of an upset stomach when I would take it all at once. So what I do is I take my half-gallon water bottle, which I literally finish after my workout. So that means by like 11 or 12, I've already drinking a half gallon of water. I will put 10 grams or a little bit more in this water, so it's very diluted, so I can sip on it throughout my morning. I also drink an unreasonable amount of water, but for me, just diluting it and taking it with more fluid has helped me to avoid the stomach aches, and I think maybe that was just my gut getting adjusted to it. So the only warning is if you have a sensitive stomach, it can mess with your digestion. Since we're speaking about supplements, the next thing I want to talk about are omega-3s. Initially, I started taking an omega-3 supplement after doing my blood panel and realizing that I was significantly deficient, which high chances that you are too. About 75 to 85% of the global world's population and the vast majority of Americans are not meeting the recommended intake of EPA and DHA, which is the key omega-3 found in fish. And unless you're an Australian and maybe you're eating a minimum of 3 servings a week of fatty fish, it's very unlikely that you're meeting this in your diet, so there's no harm in hedging your bets. Omega-3s have multiple important roles in your body, and it's vital for brain growth and cognitive function. It also plays an important role in resolving inflammation. Neuroinflammation is widely considered a driver of aging, and having omega-3 is probably the easiest thing you can do to improve your inflammatory process, according to Dr. Rhonda Patrick. Now, this isn't something that I started taking and I felt a difference similar to how I did with creatine, but I still wanted to share it just because I was really amazed how globally people are deficient in this as well. And what was interesting is the first time I took my blood test, I started taking a krill oil, which is supposed to be as good as fish oil supplement, every single day by the brand that I trust, Thorne. And when I did my blood test 6 months later, I was actually even more deficient in omega-3s. And after looking into this with a friend who's a nutritionist, he recommended to me this supplement called Maximum Omega 2000. This one is 2,000 milligrams instead of the 120 milligrams that I was initially taking. And recently I learned that people can even get prescription omega-3. It's called Loveza or Vasepa. These are prescription strength omega-3 fatty acids, which are FDA approved drugs to reduce certain cardiovascular risks and lower triglycerides. If you're someone who struggles with that, I recommend talking about this with your doctor. But in general, if you're just a normal healthy person, you can definitely start taking an omega-3 supplement. And if you're someone who does have any of these risks, look into the prescription one. I can also link the one that I take in the description below. The other supplements that I highly recommend are magnesium and vitamin D3K2. Also, as I've learned from my favorite Dr. Rhonda Patrick, these are vitamins that most people are deficient in and doesn't hurt to take. But I'm not going to go too in depth into the benefits of those since I'm trying to keep this video on theme for everything I did to get my brain sharp naturally and get off Adderall. But I just wanted to mention those 2 supplements as well. And you might be thinking, hey, these are all quite simple things like sleep, and now the next one's going to be diet. Well, yeah, surprise. A lot of things that are pretty basic foundational pillars of health were broken for me, and fixing them resolved a lot of my problems. So yes, the next thing I'm going to talk about is diet, and specifically protein intake. I loved that I didn't have to disrupt my flow to go make food. And on top of that, I didn't have these cravings because a year ago, cravings controlled my brain a lot more than they did today. Specifically, craving sugar and just being hungry throughout the day. And surprise, since I started changing my breakfast, lunch, and dinner all to incorporate substantial amounts of whole foods and protein, I don't have those cravings so much. It's easier for me to focus and it's easier for me to not disrupt the flow. Now, one thing I want to mention is that the protein craze is all the hype right now, like I've mentioned with social media. But the massive con of this is that people are just buying a bunch of things where you can't read the ingredients. And I fell for the TikTok marketing 1 or 2 years ago. I was even training for a boxing fight and I would buy all the products. Protein puffs, protein pudding, protein crackers, protein cereal, you name it. Not only were they not making my gut feel great, but they were also not filling me up and making the cravings worse. Most of these foods include vegetable oils or seed oils, and if there's ingredients that you don't know what they are, most likely they are not good for you. So I generally stopped buying all of those, and there are some protein bars on the market that you can have which do have more whole food ingredients and don't have all these chemicals, and I still get them from time time to time if I have a really busy day, but I honestly prefer just packing an apple or an orange. It tastes better and it feels better. Since I've changed my diet, so now I generally will just cook some meat. I used to be someone who was terrified of cooking meat, so I did find it easier to buy all these processed foods and sausages that you just throw in a pan, but you can get more raw meats, which just means they're not processed and they're not packaged. I can easily cook them on a pan or air fryer. I've incorporated these into my breakfast and into my lunch, and it will set me up for the entire day. And on this topic of specific types of protein, I want to mention that I recently learned that not all proteins are the same. Shout out to Mike Israel T. Sorry if I said that wrong again, but I really love that guy. He has a PhD in sports physiology and has a ton of educational videos online. He shares that getting 20 grams of protein from a protein bar is not the same as getting 20 grams of protein from a piece of meat, which kind of sounds like common sense. But to be honest, when I was tracking macros and I was actually trying to build muscle and train for intense physical things, I would be ranking in my FitnessPal protein bars and protein snacks the same as whole foods. Dr. Mike defines protein quality by using a scale called PDCAAS, the Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score, which basically approaches protein from two perspectives: the amino acid composition, does it provide all 9 essential amino acids, and digestibility, how well is it digested? And I will tell you, all those quick protein snacks I was eating were not getting digested very well. So the lower quality ones, which does not mean that they're bad for you, just means that the protein is not the same quality as the protein in the higher ones, things like peanut butter and chickpeas, which were significantly lower compared to eggs, chicken breast, fish, beef, pork, and if you're vegan, tofu. It's generally recommended to get about 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight, or if you're someone who's training, maybe more like 1 gram per body weight, and anything upper than that is superfluous and not necessary. When I discovered this fact, I was trying to meet this by making protein smoothies and a ton of protein snacks, and I found that the easiest way to do that is just to cook myself some meat that are some simple recipes. I know this isn't super applicable to everyone if you're someone who doesn't eat meat, but this is what specifically helped me because I noticed that those smoothies and those substitutes did not give me the same energy levels throughout the day. And feeling fueled and not distracted and not needing a little bit of chocolate every 1 or 2 hours so that I can have a tiny bit of a dopamine stimulation so that I can keep working and find motivation to live was not the way to go. Your gut microbiome is literally linked to your brain, and there are increasing studies showing your gut's effect on attention and memory, on your mood, on your energy, focus, and mental fatigue, neurodevelopment, and aging. The list goes on. I'm not going to go into this one because this one's just pretty self-explanatory. Just read the ingredients of what you're buying, and if you can, try not to buy the corn oils or the corn fructose or the seed oils. I know I sound like an almond mother, but since I have fixed my diet, now if I do choose to treat myself, and I literally will treat a protein bar like a candy bar, but in that case, you just get yourself a dark chocolate. And if I go have a protein bar, I can feel the effects. My gut is physically hurting. I don't feel as good. Your food is fuel. There you go. All right, that's really not scientific, but this is my story. The last thing that I coincidentally fixed and started feeling way better was my water source. For the last 2 years, I was drinking straight up lead. I live in a global city. I live in LA, and my neighborhood is specifically known. Some people have even found forever chemicals in their water. I trusted that the water filter, when we got the place, was working. So we drank it for 2 years. When you bought one of those $10 testers off Amazon, I found out, oh, this water is literally unsuitable for drinking. Again, I had to fix so many things, my diet, my sleep, but I very much think that when I was getting waves of fatigue, and I was getting waves of fatigue even when I was on my ADHD meds, it could have very much been linked to my water source. Now, I grew up in Oregon where my family and I would often just drink tap water because they said it was fine, but I urge you guys to just do your due diligence because this does change depending where you live. Water quality tester costs $10 and you can use it forever. And the good news, if you find out that you're drinking unfit water, is it's relatively affordable to fix that. I would recommend getting a reverse osmosis filtration system. You have to set that up. Do not start buying plastic water bottles because you're just replacing one problem with another one and you're just getting more microplastics in your system. So to sum up, these were the things that I fixed over the past year. The one thing I didn't mention is that I am a very physically active person. I know that I've covered a lot of basics, pillars of health and longevity, but weightlifting is just as important as sleep for living a long life. I'm planning to do a bigger video on weightlifting and fitness. Maybe I will do that next week. Whether or not you're struggling with ADHD, I hope hope something that I shared has inspired you to try something new or change a habit. Let me know if any of this was helpful, and I will see you guys next time.